here in Hollywood. Please welcome to the stage now our Senior Vice Chair and presenting sponsor, Dee Dee Danigan. She will introduce our speaker, the Senator, and then at the conclusion of his remarks, Jeff Zarenheim, our Chair of the Board, will come up. So give a big hand for Dee Dee.
So yes, this is vodka. You know, it's a real pleasure for me today, as presenting sponsor and on behalf of the Hollywood Museum in the historic Max Factor building, to introduce the Honorable Senator Kevin De León. Senator Kevin De León, President pro tempore of the California State Senate, has proven to be a tenacious leader who has led a bold agenda to increase economic opportunity for all Californians, focused on education, equity for women, immigrants, and low-wage workers, public safety, and has strongly maintained the state's leadership in building a clean energy economy that benefits everyone. In his 2 years as leader of the state of California Senate, De León has empowered his caucus members to take on big and bold legislation that truly shapes the policy conversation in the nation. Think about that. To increase transparency and public participation in the legislative process, De León implemented video of all hearings to be live streamed and archived online for the first time. Before his election to the Senate in 2010, De León served for 4 years in the Assembly. He is the first person in California history to serve as both in the Assembly and Senate as chair of the Appropriations Committee. This is a first. And in 2014, he became the first Latino elected leader of the Senate in more than a century. Senator De León is a leader on the environment and clean energy. He authored SB 350, legislation to expand the use of clean energy in California, to establish the most ambitious greenhouse gas reduction targets in the nation. And he extended California's world-leading cap-and-trade program to put a price on carbon. He additionally co-chaired Prop 39 to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to improve school energy efficiency. This year, he is also carrying legislation to put California on the path of 100% clean, renewable energy by 2045. De León has negotiated the expansion of California's film and television tax credit program, AB 1389, which I know we are all very interested in. This replaced the program's lottery system, as many of you know, with a process that quantifies job creation and economic benefits to the state's economy. Senator De León has also authored workmen's compensation reform that lowered insurance costs for businesses while increasing workers' benefits. And he helped pass the toughest equal pay legislation in the nation to close the gender wage gap. Senator, are you tired yet? The senator is a woman's advocate. In 2014, his bill to prevent sexual assault on college campuses was the first law in the nation to require affirmative consent, earning him the recognition from the magazine Marie Claire last year. How many of you read Marie Claire or know it? You see it in the grocery stores, as one of the 10 biggest supporters of women's rights in the US government. Ms. Magazine selected De León's Yes Means Yes measure as the most significant legislative victory on behalf of women in 2014. This year, he followed up with legislation that requires public high schools teaching health education classes to include sexual assault prevention in their curricula. He also authored legislation this year that would make significant investments in childcare with a focus on empowering women in the workforce. During the 2 years De León served as our Senate's leader in negotiating the budget, he has secured critical investments that strengthen the bookends of a student's educational career, pushing for new investments in childcare and higher education. Under Senator De León's leadership, California has added more than 20,000 additional slots for California students in the University of California and California State University systems. Bravo. In 2016, he also championed the No Place Like Home initiative, an innovative and ambitious proposal to address homelessness in California by securing $2 billion in bond financing for construction and rehabilitation of permanent supportive housing for the chronically homelessness in California, suffering from mental illness. Both budgets during his tenure as Senate leader have been delivered on time, provided protective resources, paid down debt, provided relief funding for the drought, and wisely invested in children and working families. Senator, you have been very, very busy, and we thank you for all you do. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call Senator Kevin De León, President pro tempore of the California State Senate, and our Chairman of the Board, Jeff Serenim, to join me on stage to make a presentation, a special presentation. Come on up. A special presentation from the Hollywood Museum to you. So I need to ask you all a question. What would the Hollywood Museum know or think or have any knowledge about what our great senator does? Well, we're going to equate it to someone rather interesting. How many of you know the great actor Anthony Quinn? How many of you know that about the similarities, or can you imagine what they could be between the senator and the Academy Award-winning Hollywood actor Anthony Quinn? Think about it. Well, both men are pioneers for Latinos. Quinn starred in more than 170 films on the silver screen and made more than 100 appearances in TV. And our Senator Kevin De León was the first Latino leader in the California State Senate that has authored more than 250 bills during his tenure in the Senate. Both claim Echo Park and East LA as their home turf. And like Quinn, Kevin De León was a fighter, both having boxing backgrounds as a young man. Oh, wow. Senator De León has received numerous awards, including the prestigious Environmental Leadership Award, Policymaker of the Year Award, Inner Solar Champion and Change Award, the coveted AARP Annual Award, the LALCC Latino Business Award, and the Armenian National Committee of America Award, just to name a few. Anthony Quinn has played villains and heroes and iconic film roles, such in Viva Zapata, Lawrence of Arabia, and Zorba the Greek. And he has received numerous awards during his 6-decade career, including 2 Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor, and a Golden Globe, the Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Achievement Award, and of course, he has a star on the Walk of Fame. Both men are versatile. They come from humble backgrounds, and they both have achieved great success and are role models for their generation and for the generations to come. Today, the Hollywood Museum would like to present you with an autographed photo of Anthony Quinn in his role as Legs, a can-do man. The film was made here at Paramount, of course. In 1938, it was a fabulous gangster melodrama, and it was called Hunted Men. And I look at this photo, and I have to say, you have to turn it the other way. It's one of the few photos we will see Anthony Quinn in a suit and tie, and that's like you. Sure, sure.
No, we're good, right? One with variety? Okay.
So let me finish in saying, like Anthony Quinn, Senator de León, Anthony Quinn rose to the top of his profession, and you have done the same. You have done more in this decade, and you have shown us the importance of working for the good of our Hollywood community, for Los Angeles communities, and for the state of California. So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming the President Pro Tem of the California State Senate, Senator Kevin de León.
Please, please, thank you so much. Please. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, please. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Good afternoon to each and every one of you. And I want to say to my very good friend Darnell, I want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Where did Darnell go? Darnell, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for that very warm, the very kind introduction of my person. You are an incredible asset here in Hollywood, and I want to thank you for what you do. If you have not been to the Hollywood Museum, the Max Factor building, please do so. It is an incredible jewel. Let's give it up for Donnell, everybody. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the Chamber, the Hollywood Chamber, specifically for having me here. It is a real pleasure to be here with each and every one of you. León, your incredible leadership with your staff as well has been quite exceptional, and I've enjoyed very much working with you and the unofficial mayor of the city of Hollywood. That would be the mayor, Baitzar Tomasian, that is here today. And I really hope he doesn't mind, but I've been looking at him, and Captain Polka, if you could please stand up just real quick, please. Can you turn around so they can see you? The reason why I've asked Captain Polka to rise so he can be recognized for all the incredible work he does as the commander of our Hollywood division here, for all the great work that the men and women of blue do for all of us. When you look at Captain Polka, you say, my God, this guy came out of Central Casting. You know, look at him. I mean, I don't know if he's a real cop or if he came out of Central Casting down the building here on Paramount Studios here. Adam 12, you know. So, but I want to thank you for the men and women of blue, what you do for each and every one of us, keeping us safe here in the great city of Los Angeles, but specifically here, all the businesses and the men and women who live here, and the students and the families here in Hollywood. So once again, thank you very much for your incredible work. Thank you. I want to say what a difference a year makes. The last time I spoke with each and every one of you, the world was a lot different. Now, I know there's a lot of political diversity of opinion in this room, no question about it. But whether you lean left, right, or center, I think we can all agree that we're living in a new political reality. I just led the Senate delegation to Japan and met with the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, and leaders across the public as well as private sector and held a press conference at the Japanese National Press Club as well, where they had about 30 journalists from Japan at the event. I can say this, that folks are deeply concerned with the direction that we're moving as a nation. It doesn't make a difference if you're on the left or the right or in the center. The same is true everywhere I have been the past few years. From Paris at the Conference of Parties 21, to Peru, to Mexico City, as well as to Marrakesh, Morocco, where we had the last Conference of Parties of the United Nations last year in late November. And because of the legacy that we have built as a state, the tradition of open-mindedness in our politics and the way we do business, the world is looking to California to lead on America's behalf. I can tell you this, I've never been more proud to call this state, California, my home. I know many of you feel that way too. From education to the environment, from high wages to healthcare to human rights, California is proof positive that progressive values put into action, in fact, improve the human condition for all individuals. We are the innovation nation state, home to Hollywood and Silicon Valley, the best public university system in the world. We are on the cusp of passing the United Kingdom to be the world's 5th largest economy. And I want to put this in context because there's only 5 other economies larger than that of the state of California. The United States of America as a whole, China, the country I just recently visited, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, that's everything intact with Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland and of course England. And then at number 6 is your great state, the state of California. I think that's something very proud to be of right now in today's world. And if you are remotely interested in rounding out the top 10, at number 7 is France, at number 8, Brazil, at number 9, a country that's been in the news quite a bit and probably will be so for the foreseeable future, that is Russia, and at number 10, it is Italy. So, to put this in context with Hollywood and Los Angeles and Orange County and San Diego, Inland Empire, Central Valley, Bay Area, Northern California, California's economy is larger than that of Vladimir Putin's Russia. And we are thriving by doing the exact opposite of what Donald Trump says, my friends. I mentioned that the new political reality that we're living in. I read the other day that before he launched his campaign for President of the United States, Donald Trump had in fact signed on to play the president in Sharknado 3. If things had only worked out, my friends. Now he's the real-life president, and a real-life Sharknado sounds almost pleasant compared to the disaster we're dealing with in Washington today. But all jokes aside, as Californians, we have been thrust onto the global stage on so many issues, from climate change to the environment to trade, to immigration to technology, as well as healthcare. People around the world are counting on us as Californians to right the ship. But let me say this, because I know many folks have heard my comments, whether it's been in the New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, CNN, elsewhere. It's not enough for those in this room and elsewhere that we just be anti-Trump. No. We know it's not enough to stand in opposition to one man or one ideology. Standing against Trump, in fact, is quite easy. It's not difficult to do that at all. It is meaningless unless you stand for something that is better. So we're standing up for each other. We're standing up for our health. We're standing up for our planet, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink. We are standing up for dignity. We are standing up for the truth. We're standing up for immigrants and working families in the great state of California. And we've made real progress building an economy that works for all Californians. In June, we passed a budget, the 7th consecutive year of an on-time budget that is balanced, because the quality of our paper with Moody's and Fitch and Standard & Poor's have improved considerably. So when we go to the bond market, the interest rates that we pay collectively as taxpayers is much less. That's why we have improved incredibly the economy of this great state. Because we believe that every single child should have the chance and the opportunity to follow their dreams and make something of themselves. We put partisan politics aside and compromise with our Republican colleagues to pass a transportation deal and invest billions of dollars, not millions or hundreds of millions, but billions of dollars in rebuilding our roads, our bridges, and transit, the vital infrastructure that keeps California moving and growing. And we came together across the aisle in a historic deal to extend our landmark cap and trade program. Now, this deal puts a price on carbon pollution, a critical step to help us meet our world-leading climate targets. This is something that's incredible, because in California, believe it or not, north of us, on the plane here at Burbank, 1 hour, Southwest Airlines. In the state capitol, your capital, Democrats and Republicans working in concert with each other have proven that we can put the partisanship aside and move the values of this great state forward. And this is what we're proving in the great state of California, unlike what's happening in Washington, D.C. today. We're also building on California's legacy of climate leadership with Senate Bill 100. My bill, my measure, my policy to require 100% clean, renewable, and zero carbon energy for California by the year 2045. Now, it's an ambitious goal, no doubt. But it's also within our power. It's within our reach, because the target date is 28 years from now. And I want to put this in context for each and every one of you, because 28 years ago, the world was just discovering the internet. We had no idea just how rapidly and completely the internet would change our lives, from the way we communicate to the way we do business, how we get around, to even how we buy our groceries. Imagine knowing that 28 years ago that Google, Facebook, Amazon, that the iPhone was just around the corner. That's the type of opportunity that we have here today, right here in California with clean energy. And we are well underway right now. Now, Donnell had mentioned a measure that I passed 2 years ago, Senate Bill 350, the most ambitious climate change measure, not in the nation, but in the entire world. It was appropriate that we held the bill signing ceremony right here in Los Angeles. And we did so at the observatory in Griffith Park. It was a beautiful event. It was a beautiful event, packed with media, and folks from all over the state of California came to the Griffith Observatory, formerly in the district of our great council member, Tom LaBonge. Tommy. And the goal was to reach 50% RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard. In short, when you turn your lights on and when you turn them off, when you actually turn on your hose, when you turn on the heater to your pool, if you have one, whether you turn on the heater to heat your room or cool your room, the air conditioner, HVAC system, we use energy. And that means that 50% of our energy has to be generated from renewable energy. Well, I can tell you this. Many of the investor-owned utilities in California, the IOUs, are well underway. They will hit 43% by the year 2020. So that demonstrates being innovative, stretching, reaching for the stars. We can reduce our carbon footprint. At the same time, we can create real jobs. Jobs that are tangible. Jobs that are real, that you can measure and actually quantify. Jobs that put people to work and expand the middle class. This is what we're doing in California. And this is why this is an incredibly exciting time, irregardless of who occupies the White House today. When Democrats and Republicans, and those who are agnostic altogether to politics, can work together to move the policies that help improve the human condition for all individuals. We have turned clean energy into a pillar of our economy that employs over 500,000 Californians. I want to put this in context because this is factual and can be reviewed and analyzed. There are more jobs in the clean energy space in California, 500,000, than there are coal mining jobs in the entire nation. In the entire nation. Which is why President Trump's fossil fuel fetish is not just environmentally out of whack, but the economics make no sense. If you're going to let the market drive the prices, then you're going to bet on renewable energy. We are reducing our carbon footprint. We're putting people to work, jobs that are real and tangible for Californians. This is what the future is. By moving great policies, we have our former Assembly member, Mike Gatto, here too, who has moved great policies as an Assembly member in the California State Legislature. By moving the right policies that send the market signals, that attract the necessary capital, that helps us create the vital technologies that are very critical so we can meet our ambitious target goals. This is what California is all about. We don't create more and more problems. We try to solve the problems and innovate. And that's why I think this is a very exciting period for us here in California, especially when it comes to the climate space, especially when it comes to clean energy. The president may have pulled out of Paris, but we're demonstrating and sending a signal to the entire world that with or without Washington's help, California will continue to remain the world's leader when it comes to fighting climate pollution and carbon in the United States of America. Now, I want to talk about housing because it may be the most pressing economic challenge in our state today. And it's critical to our long-term economic success. Last year, as Donnell had mentioned, the legislature took a very bold step forward to tackle homelessness with the Senate's No Place Like Home proposal. Without raising taxes, parcel tax, personal income tax, sales tax, we leveraged $2 billion. Not 2 million or 20 million or 200 million, but $2 billion to help our cities and counties build new permanent housing for the homeless in California, especially those suffering from mental illnesses. That money is being pushed out this year as we speak, in 2017. Now, here in Hollywood, which is home to so many incredible businesses, we know that we have a chronic homelessness problem, issue. Same thing that we have in Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles. And we know that it has metastasized beyond the traditional homeless centers in Los Angeles, in Silver Lake, in Echo Park, west sides of Los Angeles, Venice, and elsewhere. It is absolutely incumbent on us as policymakers, our local city elected officials, the community, chambers of commerce, like the ones here today, like Hollywood Chamber, that is so active here. And not just for Hollywood, but for the whole Southern California region, that we really get this right. Because we have a real historic opportunity to give people dignity and respect. Get them off the streets. Get them, between four walls, under a roof, and have them start that journey to a life, a pathway to figure out what went wrong, and provide them the wraparound services. This is historic, because now we have $2 billion that's on the table. The city passed HHH. Thank you to the voters who passed HHH. And now we have H with the wraparound services from the county of Los Angeles. We have never had more money on the table to tackle this issue in the history of the city and the county of Los Angeles. We've got to leverage these dollars correctly so we can make a huge, we should not make a small dent. We should be able to make a huge dent, and this will not solve the issue of homelessness. I understand that. Mental health issues cut across the board. Doesn't make a difference if you're Latino, white, African American, Asian American, racially mixed. If you are legal or undocumented, if you come from the West Side in Pacific Palisades, Santa Monica, Malibu, or whether you're from Pacoima or Boyle Heights. Mental illnesses impact each and every one of us. It has. But we have a real opportunity to make a huge impact. Because when the captain and our men and women are blue out there, they should not happen to be dealing with the issue of mental illnesses. And we shouldn't have to be jailing folks, because it makes no sense economically, as we know. Paying money out of our pockets to have someone arrested, to have them booked, to have them taking their pictures and their fingerprints, to have them jailed, costs each and every one of us money. And we know it doesn't fix the problem. So we have a real opportunity, and that's why I'm so excited with No Place Like Home, what the city leaders did with Mayor Eric Garcetti, along with Councilmember Jose Huizar and Marquise, my good friend Marquise. What they did together here is going to be phenomenal. And we leverage that, again, with what Mark Riley Thomas did at the county level. Again, objectively speaking, we have more money on the table than ever before in the history of the city. So it's incumbent on each and every one of you to make sure that we get it right, because you don't get too many bites at the apple. The taxpayers have been very generous, and they have really stepped up, and they've said, we believe in this, we're going to support this. But we know that taxpayers will retreat and say, never again, or don't come back to us again, because we said yes to X, Y, and Z, and we don't see the results. That's why, again, we've got to get this right. Now, I've been working very closely with the governor as well as my colleagues in the Assembly and Speaker Anthony Rendon to ensure that before we leave Sacramento in the fall, we'll come back August 21st. We'll be there for another 30 days until we recess the first year of a 2-year legislative session, that we reach a deal to address the growing housing crisis in our state and ease the pain that so many working families are feeling today. California is home to 21, or I should say 24, of the 30 most expensive rental housing markets in the country. On average, a person who's earning minimum wage in California has to work 3 jobs to pay for their rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. In too many of our cities, teachers, police officers, firefighters, and service workers, the people who we rely on every day to keep us safe, to feed us, to educate our kids, can't even afford to live in the communities in which they serve. So we need to put our heads down and get this done, and get this done right. Now, there's no question that we have a lot of room to improve on this and other fronts. But I know that CEQA, without a doubt, needs reforming. That is another pressing subject for many folks here. Am I right? We're working with our colleagues for streamlining the process, because I'm well aware that when capital is on the table, if the permitting process is long, if it's onerous, then the capital moves somewhere else. And when we have money, for example, on the issue of homelessness, we surely can't let CEQA get in the way. We need to respect our environment. We want to make sure we can breathe clean air, that we have parks and open space for our children, that we do not create toxic dumps or actually exasperate it, but we need to make sure. We need to make sure that we can streamline the permitting process so we can get the projects done. You have my word and commitment that we will move forward with this issue on housing when we come back. This is my goal to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce and to each and every one of you today. Now, we also have to take steps to preserve the character of our state, the qualities that make California special. First and foremost, in my mind, is our tradition of welcoming immigrants and embracing different cultures. In this state, if your origins is from Armenia, or whether it's from Ireland or Scotland, whether it's from England or Germany, whether it's from China, Korea, Mexico, or Central America, in this state we celebrate diversity. We don't ban it, we don't deport it, and we as sure as hell don't wall it off. Not in a great state like California. We know that by taking the draconian measures and the rhetoric that we have heard so far from Washington, that by persecuting the most vulnerable in our society, it won't improve our economic prospects. In fact, it won't bring jobs back. It won't make us safer. In fact, most of the evidence suggests that it does quite the opposite. And that's why I've authored Senate Bill 54, the California Values Act. Now, I know to a lot of folks through the mass media, it's known as, quote unquote, as the Sanctuary State Bill. Let me tell you this right now. Sanctuary State or Sanctuary City is a misnomer because it doesn't exist. And I've said that from day one. It doesn't exist. There's no invisible force shield that you're created, that the governor or I can create, or Mayor Eric Garcetti can create, and if you just get behind that force shield, that everything will be fine. That's not the reality. The federal government's, it's the federal government's prerogative to enforce federal immigration law. That's what they do. And our local police officers enforce local law. That's what they do. They're not in the business to double tax our citizens and actually enforce local law as well as federal law. We enjoy the support of our captain, our commander, to make sure that he protects and serves our businesses, our families, our children in the Hollywood division. And that's why it should be very clear that we as a state will not be an instrument or a cog in the Trump deportation machine. Because in this state, we uphold real family values. We don't separate mothers from their children and children from their fathers. That's not what we do in a great state like California. Now, an issue that's a little bit closer to home for all of you is the Hollywood Tax Credit Program. My Gatto, we're still seeing the benefits of the revamped tax credit we passed back in 2014 when Mike and I worked together along with a few other colleagues and our great Mayor Eric Garcetti. We made an aggressive statement that we want California to remain the entertainment capital of the world. And you know what, friends? It's paying off. With the sheer scale of our commitment to the industry, we're outcompeting states like Florida and North Carolina. Both states have dropped their programs after we overhauled ours here in California. We've made it clear that no one, and I mean no one, is going to outcompete us here in Hollywood and in California. In its first full year, the revised program awarded $230 million in tax credits to 55 projects. These projects are estimated to contribute a total of $1.5 billion in direct in-state spending. That includes $600 million in wages for nearly 15,000 below-the-line cast and crew. In the latest round, just last month, the Film Commission awarded nearly $70 million for 8 movie projects, including Captain Marvel as well. In fact, this is the first Marvel feature to be primarily filmed here in California since 2014. %50 of that total funding was awarded outside of LA's 30-mile zone. So the benefits are really being spread throughout the region as well as the state. In June, just a few months ago, over $40 million was awarded for returning and relocating TV projects, including Veep season number 7, for those who like Veep. These are real jobs we're bringing back from places like Vancouver and New York, and jobs that we're actually keeping in our great state. Families that are reuniting or staying together. It also means that more businesses for mom and pop shops across our region are staying open. The Hollywood Chamber, and I want to give them a lot of credit, was instrumental in bringing these jobs back. Let's give it up for the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. You guys were amazing. And this is why Mike and I and the Hollywood Chamber, and we got Tom here, IA, and all the other locals, Paramount and Warner Brothers and Fox and Universal Studios, Comcast, as well as our good friends at Disney. When we worked together in concert with each other, we made incredible things happen. And why tax credits are so difficult, believe it or not, because you can't just show up at the state capitol. Maybe you can in Washington, D.C., but not at the state capitol. And believe it or not, they're actually more fiscally conservative, with Democrats dominating both chambers, and say, we want a tax credit. Give us some money because Hollywood wants it. How many years did Hollywood try to get a tax credit? Too many years. Easily more than a decade. And the way we rewrote this measure that quantified and actually measured economic output and jobs, because, folks, you may not believe it, but there's not a magical door or a chute that we can pull and we get tax credit money that just trickles down. And so here goes. This money comes from the general fund. So it competes with the University of California. It competes with our community colleges and K through 12 public school system. It competes with programs for the environment and children. So we had to make a viable argument that can withhold muster, scrutiny, and make sure that for every dollar we invest, because it belongs to the people of California, through a tax credit, the thesis, the objective of tax credit is to modify a certain type of behavior to get a better result. And with the Hollywood film and TV tax credit, we said we'd get our dollar back that would repay back to the general fund so we can invest in education, and we'd get pennies back on the dollar on top of that. And it may be more than pennies on the dollar. I don't got the latest figures right now. But that demonstrates that we are actually getting our investment back. Families are staying intact. They're not leaving. They're being united. They're not going to New Mexico, or they're not going to Georgia or Louisiana. And perversely, we don't have men and women going to New Mexico training individuals who eventually would end up replacing them. That is huge. So I want to thank all the folks here at Paramount Studios, at Disney, Warner Brothers, Fox, Universal, Comcast, the working men of labor who are just terrific, Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, all of the businesses that have benefited collectively. We all came together, Republicans, Democrats, centrists on this issue, business and labor, city government with Eric Garcetti, my colleagues, the governor and I and others, when folks said it couldn't be done. And we proved to the rest of the state and the world that no one can out-compete us in the great state of California. And it's because of you. So I want to thank you for the work that you've done to get this to come to fruition. This is going to sunset eventually. And that means we're going to have to gear up and get ready to move this again if we want the jobs to keep rolling here in the great state of California, because this has helped create the 6th largest economy in the world. What we did today, that investment. And this is what we are actually reaping now on the back end. So this is terrific. We're going to continue to move this measure again. Now, I know I've covered a lot of ground, and there's so much more that we can talk about. But in the interest of the time, I'm going to wrap up my remarks right now. Before I go, I want to take a moment to remember all the men and women of the industry that we lost this year. Some of you know them personally or worked with them, but all of our lives have been touched by their work. Superheroes like Adam West and Roger Moore, once-in-a-generation comedians like Don Rickles, as well as Charlie Murphy, and the incredible playwright and actor Sam Shepard. America's sweetheart for so long, Mary Tyler Moore. Their time on stage and screen may have come to an end, but they continue to inspire and motivate us. I know that Hollywood is ready to carry on that great tradition. That's what you do. People around the world have been inspired and uplifted by these stories and the characters that have walked through this lobby and onto the silver screen. And this magical place, Hollywood, is a microcosm of the great state of California. We've inspired and uplifted generations, from the gold rush to the Great Migration, from the Dust Bowl Okies immortalized in the Grapes of Wrath, to the waves of refugees fleeing war from Vietnam to Rwanda and Syria. In California, we succeed because we're not dividers. We succeed because we're dreamers. We succeed because we double down on lifting people up, not putting them down. We're not going to allow one election to reverse generations of progress at the height of our historic diversity, our scientific advancement, our economic output, and our sense of global responsibility. Now, California was not part of this nation when it began, but we are clearly now the keeper of its future. God bless each and every one of you. God bless Hollywood, and God bless the California dream. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do a few questions which were submitted in advance by our members. Okay, as you may know, Los Angeles is in the process of reapproving the Hollywood Community Plan update, which has been stalled for several years by SECRA-related litigation. It is anticipated that the revised plan will also likely be sued. Continual delays in approval has meant that Hollywood must continue to abide by an outdated community plan from over 30 years ago. Do you have any advice for the business community on how to get better traction with the legislature on some common sense CEQA reforms that can help LA resolve the community plan issue?
Jeff, that's a very good question, and I think right now it is timely to deal with this issue. I don't advocate, be very clear, that we just steamroll over CEQA. CEQA was there for a certain reason. At the same time, we know that certain individuals abuse the CEQA process and have become incredible experts, if you will, and opportunists as well. I'm going to give you a really, where this intersects, and this really hits home for me. We talked about the issue of homelessness. And in Boyle Heights, in my district, they are attempting to build homeless housing. But we have a lawyer that everyone knows very well here in Hollywood who's heading up the litigation in Boyle Heights and tried to stall the housing development for the homeless community. Well, we did the heavy lifting politically. We convinced the governor and others that we need the money. Now that we have the money on the table and we're pushing the money out to deal with the problem of homelessness, now we have someone who expertly uses CEQA to their advantage for their own financial enrichment, not to further a policy good for the rest of humanity, and abuses it. So I think the timing is perfect right now to work closely with each other so we can help streamline the process, so we can, meet our objective goals and standards, at the same time protect our environment, the integrity and the character of our communities as well. It's a balancing act, It's not from one extreme to another extreme. We don't want to go to another extreme because we want to protect the characters of our communities as well as environment, but we do have to deal with certain issues that are pressing, because if we don't, homelessness issue doesn't go away, housing issue doesn't go away, these problems just compound and they mount and they mount and they mount. So we have to try to depoliticize as much as we can, and therefore working in concert with elected officials and state officials, if we put our heads together and tackle this head on, I think we can accomplish great things.
Thank you, Senator. One more question. It is undeniable the Hollywood and the city of Los Angeles have an issue with homelessness which is worsening on a daily basis. We are delighted that the voters have made this issue a top priority with the passage of Measure H and HHH. However, funding from the measures will not necessarily result in immediate help from our homeless community. What steps are being taken to address the immediate need of the homeless in Los Angeles, and how can we leverage the new dollars to have a quicker impact?
That's a very good question. Who asked that question, by the way?
It was submitted.
It was submitted, anonymously.
These were all submitted.
It was submitted anonymously? Anonymously? No, I'm just joking. That's just joking. That's joking. Yeah. It's that person behind that curtain right there, the silhouette, right? That's the that. Listen, that's a very good question, and I cannot give you a real concrete answer at this moment. I would tell you this: I'm not an expert when it comes to housing or when it comes to homelessness, but I do know this. When I decided to roll up my sleeves and get involved in this situation is when I went to Skid Row. And when I went to Skid Row, I spent half the day in Skid Row. And we had everyone there, LAPD, we had City Attorney's Office, we had LA Housing Authority, homeless advocates, housing advocates, you know, we had everybody in the room. It was very informational, it was very educational for me. After we were done with the informational session, this was the conclusion I came to, and I shared it with everybody there. I thought, this is crazy, because we have so many different authorities, very well-intentioned individuals too, but no one talks to each other. Left hand doesn't speak to the right hand doesn't speak to the left hand. I think the shelters play an incredible role, But I realized too that shelters are like FEMA, 24/7. It's like a Band-Aid also too. You need it in terms of the short-term gap, but the mid to long-term issue ultimately is the housing issue. It ultimately is a housing issue, and we became so conditioned and normalized with the status quo that I realized the biggest impact you're gonna have, not the most immediate, but the biggest impact you'll have, eventually will be to build physical housing and eventually the wraparound services. We know that housing in itself is not the panacea at all whatsoever, because individuals, whether you're from the west side or the east side, there was a mental issue there. Whether it was a Vietnam War veteran, whether someone who was sexually assaulted and was traumatized, and to deal with that trauma, they numbed their pain with medication or drugs and so forth, and it rewired, and it just started this long journey. There's a whole variety of reasons. They need the wraparound services, but we need to really coordinate our services. That's why I said earlier today, it is absolutely critical that the city, that the county, as well as the state, really work in concert with each other. And I think the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce can be a catalyst by convening and bringing this all together, because those dollars are critical. We cannot waste those dollars, because if those dollars go wasted, the voters are going to say, we're not going to support this again. And this issue of homelessness, especially among the chronically mentally ill, that is not going to go away. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's why, you know, for the immediate right now, we can provide as many services as possible. I'm not part of city government, but I would support, you know, 100%. I forget what they're called, but they're they drive the toilets, the bathrooms. They have them in San Francisco, because I just don't think it's right for businesses and for the individual himself, herself, who have to relieve themselves right on the streets. It just, you know, and I had heard that there was a proposal at the local level, but it was shot down. I don't want to get into details because I don't know the politics. I don't know what happened specifically. But short of any physical structure, for example, restrooms, why don't we have these mobile restrooms, you know, move around, you know, because folks relieving themselves on the street, we already know it's unsanitary, it's not hygienic, we know it's not good for businesses, we know it's not good for tourism. It's a lose-lose-lose situation for everybody involved in the situation. So there's a few short-term things that I think that we can do that is not going to alleviate the situation, but it helps somewhat. We have to move forward this issue on the housing structure. And that's why I think the issue of CEQA is very timely. Because if they try to build a housing, they say, well, no, not in my backyard. Well, where? Well, don't build here, build it over there, you know? And that's where we're going to need city council members to really step up also too, you know, because it's going to have to be a shared responsibility. Because I don't think any community in Los Angeles or any part of the state is going to say, come here and build it all here. This will be the epicenter. And this is one of the unintended consequences of Skid Row, when you brought all of the services concentrated in one area. I think it sounded good, theoretically, and it felt good. Why don't we have one-stop shop, everything located in one area, and as a result, what happened is you see what Skid Row is, you know. And we have to think about this smarter. We have to leverage our dollars, because one of the lines was, how do we leverage our dollars? At the state level, at the local level, at the county level, we have to really leverage our dollars and stretch it to the best of our ability, and leverage it with public-private partnerships as well too, so we can really make a huge impact. And well, I'm very serious about this. We should not be making a dent on this issue, or several dents. We should be able to make a huge impact, because never in the history of Los Angeles, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 70s, in the 60s, and you know we don't have to go further than that, has there been more money on the table at the same time. Not segmented, you know, not by piecemeal, but all coming at the same time. We need to make sure it's leveraged correctly. We can do this, and that's why I still feel very excited about this. You know, we got Measure M, you got the Olympics coming in 2028, we got No Place Like Home dollars, HHH. If we land this deal for housing, we have this incredible opportunity to remake the city. This could be possibly the next 10 years, the most transformative era since Tom Bradley, and perhaps may even surpass that era, you know, if things are done correctly, which will bring economic vitality and even more growth for the city of Los Angeles, and just improve the human condition for all individuals here in this great city. Thank you.
One last question on Olympics. All right. What actions, if any, will the state be taking to support LA in its bid for the 2028 Olympics?
Very good question. You know, I supported, so it's on the record, a 2024 Olympics right there, you know. But I'm delighted that we're going to have the 2028 Olympics. I'm delighted. It was timely because I received 2 emails from the chairman when I was in Tokyo, from the chairman of the LA Olympics bid, that is Casey Wasserman. I am the author of the original legislation that enabled the city of Los Angeles to move forward with the Olympic bid before the IOC. We have to make changes now, because that legislation was specific to the year 2024. So that means that piece of legislation now, although codified into law, is now voided. So what I am going to do is I'm going to reauthor new legislation when I come back that will move forward California as a backstop. So when we submit officially our bid, California, they know that they have the backing of the state of California as well too. This is going to be exciting because the infrastructure that will be laid out, the lasting legacy will be for our children who live here. I think it's great to have Olympians from all over the world, and the prestige and everything that brings with it, and all the economic dollars and the multiplier effect. We had to take advantage of that, because what's going to be really the legacy for Los Angeles is the infrastructure that we leave for the children who live in the city of Los Angeles and who will grow up in the city of Los Angeles. That infrastructure with the resources for parks and open space and athletic programs that will be free at charge is going to be quite amazing, unlike any other city in the entire world. So when we invest in these types of programs, it improves the quality of life for all Angelenos. So I think it's going to be a fantastic thing. So mark my words, you have it guaranteed. I'll introduce the legislation. There'll be SB. I can't give you what the number is. We'll return it in a couple weeks, and that will be, so you will be able to tell everyone in the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce the bill number, and that will be the piece of legislation that enables the city of Los Angeles to move forward with the IOC. IOC, I should say.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
With that being said, meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.